Do we really need to go to universities? I would say no, we don't. This might seem really hypocritical coming from me, but before you start throwing stones at me, please just hear me out throughout this video. The target of my critique is a society that punishes people who do not go to university, both overtly and covertly. It creates an illusion for many people that we all need a university degree, when in reality a great number of people may not want it nor need it, and maybe even better off without having gone to university. In this video, I will start by discussing the origins of this institution that we call the university and the evolution of its role into modern day, with a particular focus on the UK because this is where I'm at. I will point out the detrimental effects of grade and degree inflation that we are experiencing currently, and I shall also dissect the various reasons that people typically give for why they need to go to university. Many of these reasons, I think, are really rather false causes. And then I will finally point out some real ways in which our society punishes non-graduates and perpetuates class divides. According to Britannica, the first true university in the West was founded at Bologna late in the 11th century. It became a widely respected school of canon and civil law. The first university to arise in Northern Europe was the University of Paris, founded between 1150 and 1170. It became noted for its teaching of theology, and it served as a model for other universities in Northern Europe, such as the University of Oxford in England, which was well established by the end of the 12th century. These universities are usually self-funded by masters and students who are sincerely interested in pursuing studies in their respective fields. And typically these fields include the liberal arts such as grammar, logic, mathematics, astronomy, theology, law, and etc. These small institutions would eventually grow in size as they increasingly receive charters and funding from kings. The earliest universities were actually religious in origin, as they had roots in institutions known as Studia Generalia, which was basically where clerks and monks studied. However, as government funding for universities increased, they became increasingly secular, and subjects such as chemistry, engineering, biology, economics, and psychology, the more modern subjects that we know from the 19th centuries onward, were increasingly introduced into the curriculum. We can also, in very vastly oversimplified terms, explain the evolution in the role of the university as such. So in the beginning, they were places to educate religious personnel. Gradually, they transformed into places where people who were genuinely interested in certain discipline pursued further studies. From the 19th century onwards, the university became a sort of social currency for the upper and rising middle classes. This new function can be gleaned through various literature and social accounts of those periods. For example, in the UK, in those times, going to Oxbridge was like the required credential for achieving respectable social status for young men from middle-class families or above. Learning was no longer the focus. People wanted that entry ticket to a certain social circle that was provided by the university, and this effect is usually realized best if you went to Oxbridge. Since the last few decades, there has been a new shift in the role of the university. People are increasingly focused on the monetary return granted by the university qualification, rather than the role of status endowment. This is most exemplified in talks of the graduate earning premium. Numerous studies nowadays testify to the positive effect that a degree can have on the potential earnings of a person over a lifetime. This shift is also a major cause of degree inflation in the UK and pretty much, across the entire world. If they were only status boosters for the middle upper classes, no one else would seriously consider going to a university. However, if a degree becomes equated to an income boost, then regardless of socioeconomic background, everyone would flock to the university, as long as they could get in and afford the tuition. The first point of concern to be addressed now is, of course, degree inflation. We all know what inflation does and why it's bad. In economics, it makes money increasingly worthless. In higher education, it makes our degrees worthless. There are two aspects to be examined that are subject to inflation. So firstly, the degree itself, and secondly, the grades people achieve in their degrees. So in the UK, degree inflation actually took off most massively by the end of the last century, when the PM Tony Blair set a goal for 50% of young people to attend university. This goal has in fact only just been recently achieved. Before he set out this goal, by contrast, in like the 1980s, only between 8 to 19% of young adults went to university. So why did Blair do this? Well, it's reported that he had this meritocratic utopia of an educated elite that would rise to the top and form the basis of a dynamic and progressive knowledge economy. At a glance, British universities are a national success story. They have increased the number of undergraduate degrees they award fivefold since 1990, while the proportion of first-day handouts has quadrupled from 7% in 1994 to 29% in 2019. For every student who got a first in the early 1990s, nearly 20 do now. Master's degrees, meanwhile, are nearly 10 times as common as they were. Universities have, it seems, managed to surge both in size and quality. The downsides of degree inflation are quite intuitive. The more graduates there are, the less advantage each graduate has in the job-seeking market. This leads to an increasing amount of people pursuing higher and higher levels of postgraduate qualifications in order to remain competitive. It's really the same theory behind monetary inflation, so the more worthless money becomes, the more money you need to have in order to maintain your previous living standards. However, degrees are not like money. It's not that simple. Money has no value in itself outside of its exchange value. But a degree does have value in itself. It encompasses all the time, effort, and money that an individual has put in attaining that qualification. It also contains all the time, money, and effort that universities have put in order to teach that qualification. The depreciation of a degree means that all the resources that have been funneled into creating that degree credential are seeing lower and lower returns to the graduate when someone enters the job market with that qualification. This is basically what's driven the decrease in graduate premiums. Graduates seem to be getting back decreasing amounts of benefits in proportion to what they put in. So we not only are feeling a sort of waste on behalf of the graduates, but we're also feeling a sort of waste on behalf of a country's educational resources. Most degrees, they really exist just for the sake of providing people with that piece of certificate. So why say so? Well, firstly, a majority of degrees do not translate to job-related skills, and neither are the majority of students pursuing a university degree because they're sincerely passionate about their area. So all these resources, what are they doing? They're funneled into creating a piece of paper for these young people, and a piece of paper that is having decreasing sway in the job market. Now let us move on to the second problem here, grade inflation. And I want to first show some statistics. Compared to the 90s, the proportion of students getting good honours, so a first or 2-1, has leapt from 49 to 79%. At 13 universities, more than 90% of students were given at least a 2-1 last year. And Oxbridge is leading the charge. 96 to 99% of its English, history, and languages students get good honours. So these statistics are also illustrated very well in this graph. So why is grade inflation occurring? I would say that it parallels the shift in perception regarding a university degree into one of monetary exchange. So if I put in some time, money, and effort, I would naturally expect to get a boost to my future income. That's a fair exchange in my eyes. And naturally, a good grade would boost my chance of getting a good job that gives me a good income. This is why nowadays we always hear in the news that universities are being held ransom by students who are demanding better grades. It's as if they're saying, I've given so much to your institution, but now you're not giving me a presentable grade, and they feel like they're being treated unfairly. And also, I think universities really care a lot about their ranking. So, like the Times or the QS, all those sorts of rankings, because their ranking is one of the key ways for them to attract more and better students and more funding. Some factors that play a major influence on where university ranks includes, the graduate income, the student satisfaction, and the student's grade attainment. All three factors can be boosted with one simple gesture, giving more people good honours. It seems like a win-win situation for the university and the students. It's like they're both happy, except that it creates grade inflation and imperils academic integrity. Nowadays, it seems as if the university has a duty to give the student a reasonable grade. Otherwise, the student just complains of being wronged by the university. It's like an investor complaining about a poor return on his investment. Having established that degree inflation and grade inflation are problematic, well, a solution to the problem would be just stop being obsessed with trying to go to university. But that doesn't make any sense because you can't just tell people, don't go to university when everyone around them are going. They're like, everyone's going to make more money than I do. So what I am trying to discuss now is debunk a few myths about the benefits of a university and reveal what our society actually does to non-graduates. A lot of people have mistaken conceptions about the benefits they will get by going to a university, when in reality it's more like they're being punished for not going and they're not realizing that. So let's start with two false benefits of a university degree. Firstly, the graduate premium is a false to many people. Doing a degree has in fact left many young people worse off than otherwise. For many people, the income they're able to earn after finishing the degree is simply just not worth the exchange of all their time and student debt. An article from The Spectator writes about a survey of young graduates. The big question was whether they believed nearly $30,000 for 3 years at college was good value for money. Among graduates, many of whom will have paid these fees, the answer, by a margin of well over 2 to 1, was clear. They didn't. For good measure, nearly half of the graduates polled thought most degrees actually left them worse off overall, against just over a third who thought they led to financial benefits. Another article from The New Statesman writes, contrary to optimistic narratives linking education with economic progress, around 1 in 5 students will actually earn less over a lifetime as a result of going to university. Students studying subjects such as medicine and engineering do well on average, whereas those studying graphic design and drama often end up making losses relative to what they might have earned if they hadn't attended university. Yet there are twice as many creative arts students at English universities than there are engineering students. What these polls and statistics show is that there is no absolute positive correlation between degree attainment and your future income. Whether your degree benefits you depends a lot more on what subject you studied and maybe like what university you attended. So in reality, we get a very mixed picture of the graduate premium. Of course, there are many people who benefited, but there is still a substantial amount who did not. And this proportion of graduates is big enough to make us question the myth of income enhancement. In fact, my observation of a lot of people around me has led me to hypothesize a new sort of correlation between education attainment and graduate earnings. The typical consensus is that the higher educational attainment you have, the more potential you have for a higher income. However, this neglects the fact that most people who can pursue higher education, especially, beyond the degree level, are overwhelmingly from more well-off families. The question now becomes, was it the degree that gave them the income boost? Or was it the support of their families, both in terms of finance and social network? The second false benefit of a degree is that people think it gives you transferable skills that can help you perform better in the job. Let me dissect the origins of this myth. So whilst I do agree that there are some degrees that seriously do equip you with skills, like, if you want to be a doctor, you've got to study medicine, right? The great majority of university degrees do not and are not supposed to operate as a vocational course that helps you skill up for whatever job you want to do. You should just seek out a vocational apprenticeship if you want directly transferable study to work skills. In fact, almost all non-technical jobs say that they would accept graduates from any discipline because, university degrees are not meant to be vocational courses. Now, given that there's no obvious link between university knowledge and working knowledge, universities, employers, graduates, parents, society alike, they just felt some need to justify the graduate premium. So they invented this concept called transferable skills. You would often hear that employers welcome all degrees, however seemingly irrelevant to the job, because they believe that all degrees have transferable skills. So how do I prove that transferable skills do not exist? Let me give you an interesting and rather revealing anecdote. So if you're interested, look up a recent Supreme Court case. It's called R.V. Andrews, 2022 UKSC 24. So the defendant, Mr. Andrews, he has faked various educational qualifications on his CV and used these false qualifications to obtain rather prestigious, well-paying jobs, and some even in the academic field. And he's done that over a decade. And you know what? Ironically, Several job reviews conducted at his workplace showed that he outperformed his actually qualified peers. That is just extremely ironic. I do realize this is like one example. This Mr. Andrews could be God knows how smart he is. But when we look at the wider statistics, we know that most jobs accept graduates from just any discipline. Doesn't it sound a bit funny and ridiculous to assume that this huge diversity of university institutions and their subjects across the entire country are able to provide something uniform, known as the set of transferable skills? Each university and each degree can be as different from each other as possible. Why do they all mysteriously bestow onto their graduates this uniform trait that all employers want? The answer must be they don't. So if transferable skills do not really legitimately exist as a real measurable thing, the question now becomes, why do employers want a degree in their employees? And with this question, I segue into the next section. Whilst university degrees do not give graduates any real benefit of boosting their expected job performance, it is a very real fact that the job market punishes people without a degree. When people feel like they need to get a degree, they're really less motivated by the so-called advantages they can expect to get, but they're more driven by a desire to avert the disadvantages that they're likely to suffer did they not have a degree. In the eyes of most employers, the degree certificate does not represent a certain set of transferable skills applicable to the job, but rather some desirable personal traits that they would like in a candidate. The undertaking and completion of a degree is usually a testament to that person's dedication to work, perseverance, concentration, the ability for independent thinking and research, and etc. These traits are what the employers look for. It is not so much that the degrees teach people these traits, but rather that some people's prepossession of these traits make them more likely to pursue a degree and complete it with a reasonable grade. Secondly, employers tend to rely on universities to do what we would call a first line of elimination among applicants when they apply for that university. I think it's rather like common consensus that prestigious schools and universities are prestigious, well, in the sense that they produce good academic results, because they take on students who are already more high-performing academically to begin with. The prestige has more to do with the students that they selectively take on than the excellence of their teaching, really. In the eyes of employers, a consistent history of high academic performance bears a positive correlation to the traits that they would like to find in an employee. Hence, the recruitment team can save time by sifting through a pool of graduates primarily from a few, good universities, rather than sifting through people across the entire country. Because they're much more likely to find the types of people they want in that pre-existing pool, because the university has done this first line of elimination for them. This is not to say that people without degrees or prestigious degrees won't possess those desirable traits and become potentially high-performing employees, but it's just that the recruitment team has a limited amount of time and effort that they could spend in finding the candidates they want. They just needed this efficient shortcut for them to know where to look for the people they want. The real benefit of a degree, then, is its signposting effect. The degree certificate is signposting to the employer that you have these desirable traits that are likely to make you a great asset to the firm. The piece of qualification makes it much more likely for you to attract the attention of a recruiter. Even 10 seconds of extra attention a recruiter gives you because they saw your university qualification can increase your chances of being hired.
As I was editing, I was just really struck by how bleak and dismal and just pathetic this entire picture of what the young person aspires to do with their life sounds like. It's literally that we're all trying to craft ourselves into the excellent employee model. We're trying to steer ourselves into models that are favored by companies, and this dystopian picture is actually kind of like making me shiver a little. I honestly think it's quite sad that this is what our society has come to pursue as measures of social worth or even like self-worth.
Now, it seems as if I've just contradicted myself. I've just said in the previous section that the graduate premium is a false, and now I'm saying that the degree increases one's chances of being picked by a high-paying employer. It seems contradictory, but just bear with me whilst I explain that it's really not. When we call something a premium, it should be a benefit that goes above and beyond the amount of the original investment. So the fact is, it is true that graduates typically earn more than non-graduates, but it's not necessarily true that they're getting a premium, because many graduates think the small boost to the income is insufficient to justify the investment they've put into higher education. So rather, I think it's more accurate to say that they can successfully avoid the disadvantages suffered by many non-graduates. Now, the second real benefit of a degree is its networking effect. And this, I think, is slightly problematic because it plays a role in reinforcing class divides. So let's look back into history. So in the past, the degree is seen as your entry ticket into sort of middle upper class society because it is a reflection of your parents' ability in terms of wealth to give you a prestigious education. It is only after you have proved your prestige of birth by such means that you're accepted into a good social strata for your generation. Although it is still true nowadays that educational attainment is somewhat linked to family wealth, the values of our modern meritocratic society has moved us away from this straightforward equation of education to birth. Rather, we tend to equate it more with personal merit. If you want a clear, precise definition of what our modern meritocratic society defines merit as, you can watch my video linked here. But as I have discussed in my previous video, merit is something that's rather hard to define. We can very roughly understand it as someone is perceived to have good status in the merit hierarchy if he or she is cultured, smart, knowledgeable, has a good income or the potential of earning a good income, or is talented in some area. If you have attended university, and in particular a prestigious one, you seem to be immediately perceived by others as having these sort of merits that would warrant you a decent position on the merit pyramid. In this system, people from different educational backgrounds can easily become divided into different strata across society, just as centuries before people divided these strata based on birth. Many people who do not have degrees but are still able to move in, what we would consider a more prestigious strata of society are usually because of their birth. So in other words, if you're not in like the middle upper class by birth, your attainment of higher education is really your only entry ticket in there. So the truth and the brutal, elitist, sad truth is that the university you attend or do not attend can have a lifelong impact on your status in the meritocracy.
I just realized that I have completely fucked up with using strata and stratum correctly in the singular and plural forms, and I guess this can be a testament that I am failing the elitist meritocracy of being cultured. But honestly, whatever.
Now, as I'm wrapping this video up, I am finally returning to the question that I opened with. I believe that we do not need a degree, in the sense that it does not make us a better person or help equip us with the necessary skills to be a high-performing employee in most occupations. Contrary to what Tony Blair thought, I personally think giving everyone a degree is not the best way to go about boosting productivity in the economy just because he's assuming that it makes everyone better workers. In reality, doing so is just going to give us degree inflation and grade inflation, and that is literally what we're putting up with right now. The real tragedy of our society is that everyone is so engrossed in the scramble to get a degree that most people fail to step back and think and realize that we do not really need it. It's not just the young people pursuing degrees that do not realize, it's the politicians, the parents, the universities, the employers. This false perception of necessity has led to a society that pushes people to attain higher and higher levels of education for really no meaning at all, and it punishes people who do not. Personally, I think university degrees should be for people who are sincerely interested in pursuing further study in a certain subject. And of course, I understand I can't just put this video out there and tell everyone not to go to universities because there are real harms to not going. But I just wish that this can open some people's eyes to the fact that it is this universal drive to get a university degree that is problematic. So thank you for watching this video, and I would love to see any comments on what you guys think. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed my channel.